Seattle's freezing rain blurred my cheap mascara as I read my mother's text outside the graduation hall, telling me to take the bus because they were too busy celebrating my brother. I had exactly $12 to my name. Then my phone buzzed. It was my CFO screaming that we had just gone public and I was rich. I realized I was no longer the black sheep. I was the shark, and sharks never let their prey escape. My name is Kathleen Ridgway, at 32 years old, standing in the torrential downpour of a Seattle evening. I felt less like a woman who had just conquered the world and more like a child who had been left behind at a rest stop. The heavy velvet of my master's gown was soaked through, clinging to my skin like a cold, dead weight. I held my mortarboard hat against my chest to protect it from the wind, though the tassel was already ruined, dripping a sad stream of black dye onto my white collar. This was supposed to be the pinnacle. This was the night I justified 5 years of sleeping 4 hours a night. I had spent my days working as a senior software engineer at Viridian Tech, solving coding crises that threatened to sink million-dollar contracts, and my nights grinding through case studies and financial modeling for my MBA at one of the most prestigious universities on the West Coast. I had done it. I had graduated with honors, but as I scanned the thinning crowd of families huddled under umbrellas outside the auditorium, the cold knot in my stomach tightened. I looked for the familiar beige trench coat my mother wore, or my father's stoop, or even the slouching posture of my younger brother. Julian. I had bought them tickets, not just tickets to the ceremony, but plane tickets, business class. I had drained my savings to ensure they traveled in comfort, spending nearly $3,000 to fly them up from California so they could see me walk across the stage. I wanted them to be proud. I wanted, just for once, to be the one they looked at with that shining, teary-eyed adoration they usually reserved for Julian whenever he managed to tie his own shoelaces correctly. The crowd thinned until it was just me and the security guards locking the doors. They were not here. My phone vibrated in my hand. I pulled it out. Wiping the rain off the screen with a trembling thumb, I opened Instagram, a habit born of masochism, and there it was. A photo posted 20 minutes ago. The location tag read, "The Gilded Lobster," a seafood restaurant downtown where an appetizer cost more than my weekly grocery budget. In the photo, my parents were beaming, holding up glasses of champagne. In the center sat Julian, wearing a suit I had paid for, grinning like a Cheshire cat. On his plate sat a massive, bright red lobster. The caption, written by my mother, read, "Celebrating our shining star. Julian just got accepted as a brand ambassador intern for Nutri-Glow. So proud of his journey. Big things are coming." I felt the bile rise in my throat. Nutri-Glow was a pyramid scheme. It was a multi-level marketing scam that sold overpriced vitamins. Julian was 28 years old. He was unemployed. The position was an unpaid internship where you had to buy $500 worth of inventory up front, and they were eating lobster to celebrate it. They were eating a meal that likely cost $400 while I stood in the rain, clutching a diploma that represented years of blood and sweat. Completely alone. I walked to the parking lot, my heels sinking into the mud. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to crawl into bed and forget that I existed. I reached my car, a battered 10-year-old sedan that had seen better days, and turned the key. Nothing, just a hollow, mocking click. I tried again. Click, click, silence. The battery was dead. Or the starter. It did not matter. The universe was laughing at me. I checked my bank account app. $12.43. That was all I had left until payday next week. I had paid the rent for the apartment I shared with them. I had paid the utilities. I had paid for the plane tickets. I had paid for Julian's suit. I swallowed my pride and texted my mother. "Car won't start at the uni. Can you guys come get me? Please. It is pouring rain." I watched the 3 dots of the typing indicator appear almost immediately. Hope, that treacherous thing, fluttered in my chest. Maybe they would feel guilty. Maybe they would realize they had missed the ceremony and come rushing to apologize. The text popped up, glowing bright against the gloom of the parking lot. "Don't expect help. We are busy celebrating Julian's modeling contract. Virtual. It is a big night for him. Take the bus. You are smart. Figure it out. I stared at the words. Modeling contract. It was a lie. It was a delusion. But that was not what broke me. It was the cruelty. The absolute, casual cruelty of leaving their daughter stranded in the rain on her graduation night because they could not bear to look away from their golden sun for 1 hour. I dropped my hand. I let the phone hang by my side. I looked at the dark sky and let the rain mix with the hot tears that finally spilled over. I was going to collapse. I was going to sink down onto this wet asphalt and never get up. I was done. I was the family mule, the workhorse, the bank account, and I was empty. Then, the phone buzzed again. I looked at it through blurry eyes. It was not my mother. It was a number I did not recognize. But the area code was local. I almost didn't answer. I didn't have the energy to talk to a telemarketer. But some instinct, some small spark of curiosity, made me swipe right. Hello? My voice cracked, thick with crying. Kathleen? Is that you? The voice was frantic, high-pitched. It took me a second to recognize it. It was Marcus, the chief financial officer of Viridian Tech. Marcus? I sniffled, wiping my nose on my sodden sleeve. I am sorry. It is really not a good time. I am stranded at... Kathleen, shut up. Listen to me. Are you sitting down? No, I am standing in a puddle. Find a chair or a wall. Lean on something. Kathleen, the market just closed on the East Coast. The IPO. It happened. My brain was sluggish. The IPO. We had been talking about the initial public offering for 2 years. I had been with Viridian since it was 5 people in a garage. I was employee number 4. I had accepted a lower salary in exchange for aggressive stock options because I believed in the code. I believed in the product. But mostly, I accepted it because I was used to living on nothing. Okay, I said dully. Did we launch? Did we launch? Kathleen? We went to the moon. The opening bell rang, and the stock opened at $30. It closed at $85 a share. I blinked. The rain was running into my eyes. 85? Yes, 85. I am looking at your cap table right now. You have 300,000 vested options with a strike price of pennies. Do you have a calculator? No, do not bother. I already did the math. Marcus paused. I could hear him hyperventilating on the other end. Kathleen, your portfolio, it is worth $25.5 million. The world stopped. The rain stopped. The sound of the traffic on the highway nearby faded into a dull hum. What? I whispered. $25,500,000. Marcus screamed into the phone. And that is just at closing today. Analysts are saying it could hit 100 by next week. You are rich. Kathleen, you are filthy. Stinking rich. You are not just a senior engineer anymore. You are a whale. God, I am crying. Are you crying? You should be crying. I looked down at my shoes. They were cheap flats from a discount store, now ruined by the mud. I looked at my reflection in the car window. Mascara was running down my cheeks like war paint. I looked at the text message from my mother still visible on the screen notification. Don't expect help. I had $12.43 in my checking account. I could not afford a taxi. I could barely afford a sandwich. And I had $25 million in my brokerage account. A sound escaped my lips. It started as a sob, but it twisted in my throat and came out as a laugh. It was a dark, jagged sound. It was the sound of a tectonic plate shifting deep inside the earth. Kathleen, are you there? Marcus asked. I am here, I said. My voice sounded different. It was steady. The trembling had stopped. The cold was still there, but I could not feel it anymore. It was as if a layer of steel had suddenly encased my skin. Marcus, thank you. Go celebrate, he yelled. Buy a boat. Buy an island. See you at the office on Monday, you millionaire. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time. The screen of my phone went dark. $25 million. I whispered the words to the rain. $25 million. I could buy the restaurant where my parents were eating lobster. I could buy the building. I could buy the modeling agency Julian was lying about. I could buy this university and name a library after myself. I looked at the car, the piece of junk that had stranded me. I kicked the tire. Hard. Then I opened the Uber app. The ride to the house would cost $45. It would overdraft my account. I would be in the negative. I would have to pay a $35 overdraft fee. I did not care. I requested the ride. As I waited for the black sedan to arrive, a thought formed in my mind. It was cold and sharp, like a scalpel. I could call them. I could scream at them. I could tell them I was rich and watch them scramble. I could watch my mother's face turn from disdain to that greedy, fawning adoration she had for money. I could watch Julian try to borrow cash for his next venture. But then, I thought of the text, "Don't expect help." They thought I was helpless. They thought I was the failure who could not even get a ride home. They liked me that way. It made them feel superior. It made Julian feel like a winner. Even as he leached off my paycheck, if I told them, the dynamic would change. They would not respect me. They would just consume me. They were parasites, and I had just become a very, very large host. No, I deleted the screenshot I had instinctively taken of the stock price. I put my phone in my pocket. I wiped the mascara from under my eyes, smearing it further, making myself look even more pathetic. The Uber arrived. I sat in the back, shivering, staring out the window as the city lights blurred by. I was a millionaire. I was powerful. I was free. But for tonight, I was going to be Kathleen's disappointment. The car pulled up to the curb of the rental house. It was a dreary, peeling two-story house in a suburb that had seen better days. The grass was overgrown because Julian refused to mow it, and my father said he had a bad back. The porch light was off. They never left it on for me. I walked up the driveway. I could hear the TV blaring inside. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The smell hit me immediately. Stale frying oil, old carpet, and the cloying scent of my mother's cheap perfume. My mother was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. My father was asleep in the armchair, his mouth open. Julian was not there. He was probably out spending the money I gave him for groceries on drinks with his fans. My mother looked up. Her eyes raked over my soaked gown, my ruined shoes, my wet hair. There was no concern, only annoyance. "You are late," she snapped, not even putting her phone down. "We have been home for an hour. There is no dinner. I told you. We were busy with Julian. We could not be expected to cook after such a big celebration." She did not ask about the ceremony. She did not ask how I got home. She did not notice the diploma tube I was clutching so hard the plastic was cracking. "Julian is going to be a star. Kathleen," she continued, her voice taking on that dreamy, delusional quality she always used when talking about him. "He met so many important people tonight. You should have seen him. He has the aura of success, unlike some people who just exist." I stood in the entryway. Water dripped from my hem onto the dirty linoleum. My stomach growled, loud and empty. The overdraft notification popped up on my phone screen in my pocket. I looked at her. I really looked at her. For the first time in 32 years, I did not see my mother, the authority figure whose approval I desperately craved. I saw a small, bitter woman sitting on a second-hand couch in a house paid for by a daughter she despised. I tightened my grip on the diploma. "I am sorry, Mom," I said softly. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I will make some pasta. Did Julian eat?" "He is out celebrating with his team," she scoffed. "Do not wait up. Just make sure the kitchen is clean before you go to bed. I do not want to see a mess in the morning." "Okay," I said. I walked past her into the kitchen. I filled a pot with water and set it on the stove. I watched the blue flame flicker to life. I was worth $25 million, and they were never going to see a single penny of it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the crumpled program from the graduation ceremony. My name was listed there. Kathleen Ridgway, MBA, summa cum laude. I stared at it for a moment. Then I crumpled it into a ball and tossed it into the trash can on top of a pile of greasy takeout boxes. I was not the victim anymore. I was the architect, and the demolition was just beginning. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Sterling Associates building with a brilliance that felt almost offensive. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my battered leather satchel, looking up at the 42nd floor. I had told my mother I was going in early to fix a bug in the legacy code, a lie that came easily because it was usually true, but today, I was not fixing code. I was fixing my life. I took the elevator up, watching the floor numbers climb. My reflection in the polished brass doors looked out of place. I was wearing my interview suit from 5 years ago, the fabric shiny at the elbows, and my shoes were still damp from last night's rain. I looked like a desperate petitioner, not a client. When the doors opened, I was ushered into a corner office that smelled of old money, mahogany, leather, and expensive coffee. Behind the desk sat Beatrice Sterling. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair cut into a sharp bob and eyes that looked like they could appraise the value of your soul in 3 seconds. She was a tax attorney, a shark in a silk blouse, recommended by the one friend I had at Viridian who knew about trust funds. "Ms. Ridgway," she said. Not rising, she gestured to the chair opposite her. "I have reviewed the documents sent over by your CFO, the vesting schedule, the strike price, the current market valuation." I sat down, keeping my bag in my lap. "Is it real?" I asked. "Is the number real?" Beatrice took off her glasses and looked at me. "It is very real, after taxes. Assuming you exercise and sell at the current projected plateau, you are looking at a liquid net worth of approximately $16 million. If you hold and the stock climbs as predicted, $25 million is a conservative estimate." $16 million. The number felt abstract, like a distance to a star. "But," Beatrice continued, her voice sharpening, "wealth is like blood. It attracts predators. Before we set up your LLCs and your blind trusts, I need to know the landscape. You mentioned family in your initial email. Tell me about the liabilities." I hesitated. "They are not liabilities. They are my parents." Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "In my experience, dear, there is often no difference." That was when I opened my laptop. I did not open the bank's website. I opened a file I had named system_logs.xlsx. It was a decoy name. I called it the ghost spreadsheet. "I need to show you something," I said. For the last 10 years, I had been the practical one, the dry one, the boring one. My brother, Julian, was the artist. He was the dreamer with the soul of a poet, according to my mother, and the potential of a visionary, according to my father. He played the guitar badly. He painted mediocre abstracts. He wrote screenplays that had no plot. But to them, he was magic. I was just the machinery that kept the lights on so the magic could happen. I turned the laptop toward Beatrice. "This is a record," I said, my voice steady, "of everything." The spreadsheet had 412 rows. Row 1, mortgage payment, parents' house, October 2016, $2,400. Row 10, Julian's car insurance, annual premium, $1,800. Row 50, settlement for neighbor's fence destroyed by Julian, $3,000. I walked Beatrice through the columns. "I have paid the mortgage on their 4-bedroom suburban home for a decade. I pay the utilities. I pay the property tax. I pay for their phones. I pay for Julian's studio rent, even though he has never sold a painting." Beatrice scrolled down, her face impassive. "And they do not work?" "My father retired early because of stress 10 years ago. My mother says her job is managing Julian's career. Julian is finding himself. He has been finding himself for a very long time," Beatrice noted dryly. Then she stopped scrolling. She pointed a manicured finger at a highlighted row from 3 years ago. The amount was $12,000. The label read, Emergency withdrawal. Julian's inspiration trip. "What is this?" she asked. I felt the old phantom pain in my side. I touched the spot on my abdomen where the scar was. 3 years ago, my appendix burst, I said. The memory was so vivid, I could smell the antiseptic of the hospital waiting room. I was in the hospital for 4 days. I had complications. It was septic. I almost died. I looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. I had saved $15,000 in a separate high-yield savings account. It was my safety net. It was everything I had. I gave my mother power of attorney over it just in case something happened to me during surgery, so she could pay the hospital bills. And when I woke up, the money was gone. All of it. Beatrice took off her glasses again. "They stole it?" "They spent it," I corrected. Julian was going through a creative block. He was depressed. My mother said he needed a breakthrough. So, while I was unconscious, recovering from surgery, they liquidated my savings and bought him a vintage Triumph motorcycle. She told me it was necessary. She said, "Kathleen, you have insurance. You will be fine. Julian needs the wind in his hair to feel alive again." I remembered lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the stitches pull at my skin, realizing that my life was worth less to them than my brother's whim. I had to put the hospital bill on a credit card with 20% interest. It took me 2 years to pay off the debt of my own survival. Meanwhile, Julian crashed the motorcycle 3 months later and left it to rust in the backyard. "Total it up," Beatrice said softly. I scrolled to the bottom. I had bolded the final cell. $450,000, I read aloud. "That is the principal. If I calculated the lost compound interest from the investments I could have made, it is over $1 million. $450,000. It was a house. It was a life. It was the price of my servitude." Beatrice closed the laptop. She leaned forward, and for the first time, her expression softened into something resembling pity, though it was hardened by professional rage. "Kathleen, you are not a daughter to these people," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You are an asset class, and a depreciating one at that, because they are using you up. If we do not lock down this money, they will drain you dry. They will eat the meat and suck the marrow." She pushed a stack of papers toward me. "We are going to form a shell company. Your name will appear nowhere. The stock proceeds will go into a blind trust. I will be the trustee. If they want a dime, they have to sue me. And I assure you, they do not want to sue me." I signed the papers. My hand did not shake. With every signature, I felt a heavy chain loosening around my chest. When I walked out of the office an hour later, the sun was fully up. I felt lighter. I had a secret. And for the first time, the secret was a shield. Not a burden, but the universe has a way of testing your resolve. I was sitting in a coffee shop around the corner, staring at my new bank account balance on my phone, the zero balance of the old account, and the impending transfer notification. When my phone rang, the screen displayed Mom. My stomach did the familiar flip-flop of anxiety. Pavlovian conditioning. Ringtone meant demand. Demand meant guilt. Guilt meant payment. I took a deep breath. I channeled Beatrice Sterling. I answered. "Hello? Kathleen?" My mother's voice was shrill. There was no greeting. No "how are you?" No "sorry, we left you in the rain." "Where are you?" "I called your office line and they said you were not at your desk. We have an emergency." "I am at a client meeting," I lied. "What is wrong? Is Dad okay?" "It is the credit card," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The one ending in 4098. It was declined at the grocery store. It was humiliating. Kathleen, the cashier looked at me like I was a pauper. There were people behind me." The card ending in 4098 was my card. I had given it to her for emergencies only. She used it for groceries, hair appointments, and, well, apparently, lobster dinners. "I need you to transfer $3,000 immediately," she demanded. "And you need to call the bank and yell at them. Tell them who we are." "Who are we?" I repeated. Who are we? Mom? Don't be fresh. Just transfer the money. Julian needs protein powder for his workout regimen, and I saw a lovely blazer that would look perfect for his first day at NutriGlow. I looked at the coffee in my hand. It was black, bitter. No, I said. Silence. Absolute, stunned silence on the other end. It lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Excuse me? She whispered. I said no. I cannot transfer the money. What do you mean you can't? Her voice rose an octave. Did you spend it? Did you buy something stupid? Kathleen, we discussed this. Your salary is family money. We made sacrifices for your education. I took a pay cut, I said. The lie slid out, smooth and cold. The company is struggling. They slashed salaries across the board. I am making 40% less starting today. I barely have enough for rent. It was the exact opposite of the truth. I was currently making more in interest per hour than I used to make in a month. A pay cut? She screamed. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. How could you let them do that? Did you not fight for us? Did you not tell them you have a family to support? It is the economy. Mom, everyone is suffering. We are not everyone, she shrieked. Julian is on the brink of stardom. He cannot be worried about money right now. His mental state is fragile. He needs support. And you are the one with the steady job, the boring degree, and you cannot even hold on to your salary? I am sorry, I said, and I realized I wasn't. I have to go. My boss is waving at me. You are useless, she yelled. The venom in her voice was potent, distilled over years of disappointment. God, why is everything so hard with you? Julian would never let this happen. Julian has vision. You just have incompetence. Fix this. Kathleen, I do not care how. Sell your clothes. Drive Uber at night. Fix it by tonight. She hung up. I stared at the phone. The screen went black. Useless. Incompetent. Julian would never. I put the phone down on the table. Inside. The old Kathleen, the one who craved their love, was bleeding. She wanted to call back, apologize, transfer the last $12, take out a payday loan, anything to stop the yelling. But the new Kathleen, the one with the ghost spreadsheet and the $16 million, sat very still. I remembered the motorcycle. I remembered the appendix scar. I remembered the rain last night. I picked up my coffee and took a sip. It was still hot. Fix it by tonight, I whispered to the empty chair across from me. Oh, I was going to fix it. I was going to fix it so thoroughly that when I was done, there would be nothing left to break. I opened my laptop again. I sent a message to the real estate agent Beatrice had recommended. Subject, penthouse viewing. Body, I am ready to move forward. Today, then. I opened the spreadsheet one last time. I added a new row at the bottom. Row 413. Mom's insults. Phone call. June 10th. Cost, priceless. I closed the laptop with a snap that sounded like a gunshot. The mourning period was over. The accounting period had begun. The key to the penthouse felt heavier than any key I had ever held. It was a sleek, matte black card, not a jagged piece of metal, but the weight was metaphorical. I stood in the center of the living room on the 45th floor of the Meridian Tower. Looking out at the city through floor-to-ceiling glass, the apartment was registered to KVR Holdings, a limited liability company Beatrice had set up 48 hours ago. My name appeared nowhere on the deed. To the world, this $3 million sanctuary belonged to a faceless corporate entity. To me. It was the first breath of oxygen I had taken in a decade. The air conditioning hummed with a silence that money buys. I walked to the kitchen, running my hand over the cool marble of the island. It was empty. The fridge was empty. The closets were empty. It was perfect. I spent an hour just lying on the floor in the center of the empty living room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the absence of yelling, the absence of the television blaring reality shows, the absence of demand. Then, I looked at my watch. It was 5 in the afternoon. My shift as the dutiful, impoverished daughter was about to begin. I drove my battered sedan away from the luxury district and back toward the suburbs. I parked a block away from the house to change. I took off my new Italian blazer, folded it carefully into a hidden compartment in the trunk, and pulled on a frayed cardigan I had retrieved from the donation pile. I messed up my hair. I rubbed my eyes to make them look red and tired. When I walked through the front door, the assault was immediate. "The internet is down," Julian announced. He was lying on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, tossing a tennis ball against the wall. Thump, thump, thump. "It is not down," I said, dropping my bag on the floor. "It is just slower." "Slower? It is buffering. Kathleen, I am trying to watch a tutorial on brand synergy for Nutri-Glow. How am I supposed to learn if the video stops every 10 seconds? "I downgraded the plan," I said, walking to the kitchen to pour a glass of tap water. "The premium package was $120 a month. The basic package is $40. I told you, my salary was cut. We have to make sacrifices." My mother stormed into the room, her face a mask of indignation. "Sacrifices? You cut the cable too?" I tried to watch my soap opera and the screen said, "Subscription required." "Cable is a luxury. Mom, we have an antenna. You can get the local news." "Local news?" She looked at me as if I had suggested she eat out of a dumpster. "I do not watch the news. It is depressing. I need my shows. How could you be so selfish? You are punishing us because you are failing at your job." "I am not punishing you. I am trying to keep a roof over our heads," I said, my voice trembling with a practiced anxiety. "Do you know how much the electric bill was last month? $300. We have to keep the lights off during the day." I walked over to the thermostat, which was set to a tropical 75 degrees, and dialed it down to 62. "Hey!" my father shouted from the recliner. "I have bad circulation." "Put on a sweater, Dad," I said. The following week was a study in psychological warfare. I watched them unravel. Without their digital distractions and their creature comforts, they were forced to sit with themselves, and they hated the company. They picked fights with each other. They paced, and inevitably, they turned their predatory gaze toward me, convinced I was holding out on them. I came home on a Tuesday to find my bedroom door open. My heart did not race. I had expected this. I walked in to find the room tossed. My drawers were pulled out, clothes scattered on the floor. My shoebox of old receipts was overturned, and my desk was empty. My old laptop, a clunky machine I had used for 5 years before Veridian issued me a workstation, was gone. I walked downstairs. Julian was in the kitchen, eating a bowl of the generic cereal I had bought to replace his name-brand granola. He didn't even look up. "Where is my laptop?" "Julian?" "What laptop?" he mumbled, milk dripping from his chin. "The one on my desk, the one with all my personal photos, my writing." "Oh, that piece of junk?" He shrugged. "It was gathering dust. I sold it." The rage that flared in my chest was hot and white, but I doused it with ice water. I had anticipated this. 3 days ago, I had transferred every single file, every photo, every document to an encrypted cloud server and wiped the hard drive. I had even left a few dummy files on the desktop titled bankruptcy_draft ... and loan_rejection_letter ... PDF ... "You sold my computer?" I whispered, leaning against the doorframe. "Julian, I needed that for freelance work. I was trying to make extra money." "Chill out. Kathleen, I only got $200 for it at the pawn shop. It barely covered the gas for my scooter and some networking drinks. You should thank me. I am decluttering your life." He smiled, a charming, boyish smile that had gotten him out of trouble for 28 years. $200, I repeated. "Okay." I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply added the line item to the ghost spreadsheet in my mind. Stolen laptop. Replacement value, $1,200. Emotional value, 0, because you are predictable. But Julian's ambition was not limited to petty theft. 2 days later, I received an email notification. It was not on my personal email, but on a credit monitoring service Beatrice had insisted I subscribe to. It alerted me to a new inquiry on my credit report. Lender: Quick Cash. Now online. Amount: $5,000. Status: approved. Interest rate: 350%, a PR. I froze. I was sitting in my office at Veridian, wearing a silk blouse and sipping an espresso. I logged into the lender's portal using the reset password function. There it was, an application submitted yesterday. The applicant's name was Kathleen Ridgway. The social security number was mine, but the email address was julestheking88@gmail.com. Julian had used my identity to take out a predatory payday loan. In the past. The old Kathleen would have panicked. She would have called the lender, cried, paid off the loan to avoid ruining her credit score, and then begged Julian not to do it again. She would have protected him from the consequences. The new Kathleen printed the loan application. Then, she printed the IP address log, proving the application came from the router in my parents' house. Then, she printed a comparison of the electronic signature on the loan versus my actual signature. I put the documents in a folder labeled Evidence. I did not pay the loan. Instead, I called the fraud department and filed a formal report. I explicitly named Julian Ridgway as the suspect. "Are you sure you want to press charges if it is a family member?" the agent asked, her voice gentle. "I am sure," I said. "He is not family. He is a thief." That afternoon, I met with the private investigator Beatrice had hired. His name was Miller, a man who looked like he slept in his car and knew everyone's dirty laundry. We met in a diner far from my office. "You were right about the jewelry," Miller said, sliding a manila envelope across the sticky table. My breath hitched. My grandmother had left me a small collection of vintage jewelry, a sapphire brooch, a pearl necklace, and a diamond engagement ring from the 1920s. I kept them in a locked box in my mother's closet because she claimed it was the safest place in the house. I opened the envelope. There were photocopies of pawn slips. Item: sapphire brooch. Date: 6 months ago. Seller: Martha Ridgway. Item: diamond ring. Date: 2 months ago. Seller: Martha Ridgway. They had sold them. They had sold the only things I had left of the one person who had actually loved me. And they had done it months ago, likely to pay for Julian's portfolio photos or my father's gambling debts, all while I was paying their mortgage. "Did you find the items?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "The brooch is gone, melted down most likely," Miller said, "but the ring is still at the shop. It is on hold. They were planning to sell it next week." "Buy it?" I said. "I do not care what it costs. Get it back." "Done," Miller said. He hesitated, then pulled out another photo. "There is something else. I put a bug in the living room like you asked. You might want to listen to the audio file on the flash drive." I drove to the penthouse that evening. I did not go home. I needed the silence of the 45th floor to process what I was holding. I sat on the white leather sofa and plugged the flash drive into my secure laptop. The audio file was dated from the night before, around 9 in the evening. The sound of static filled the room, then my father's coughing, then my mother's voice, sharp and clear. "She is losing it. Robert, did you see her shoes? She is wearing rags, and she keeps talking about a pay cut. I think she is having a breakdown." "She is hiding money," Julian's voice chimed in. "There is no way she is that broke. She is just being a bitch." "I am worried," my mother said. Her voice dripped with a fake concern that made my skin crawl. "If she snaps, or if she gets fired, what happens to us? The house is in her name, but we can't let her control it if she is mentally unstable." "So what do we do?" my father asked. "I called Dr. Evans," my mother said. Dr. Evans was an old family friend, a psychiatrist who had written Julian a prescription for Adderall whenever he asked. He said if we can prove she is exhibiting erratic behavior, paranoia, financial irresponsibility, delusions of poverty, we could petition for a conservatorship, or at least power of attorney, for her own good. Can we do that? Julian sounded excited. Like what happened to that pop star. It is possible, my mother said. We just need to push her a little, make her angry, make her scream in front of people. If we get control of her accounts, we can manage the finances properly. We can make sure the money goes where it is needed, to the family, to Julian's future. She has always been unstable, my father grunted. Remember when she cried over that stupid cat? Too emotional, not tough like us. I stopped the recording. The silence in the penthouse was absolute. They were not just parasites. They were predators. They were plotting to declare me insane so they could enslave me legally. They wanted to strip me of my autonomy, my rights, and my sanity, just to ensure the cash flow never stopped. I walked to the window. The city lights of Seattle sprawled out below me, a grid of gold and amber. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I did not see a victim. I did not see the tired, erratic woman they described. I saw a CEO. I saw a strategist. They wanted erratic behavior? Fine. I would give them a performance. They wanted to push me? I would let them think I was falling, right until the moment they stepped off the ledge to catch me. I picked up my phone and called Beatrice. It was late, but she answered on the first ring. Kathleen? They are planning a conservatorship, I said. They want to take power of attorney. Beatrice let out a low, dangerous sound. Over my dead body. Did you get the evidence? I have the audio. I have the loan fraud documents. I have the pawn slips. Good. We have enough to bury them. Are you ready to pull the trigger? Not yet, I said. They want to make a scene? They want to expose my instability in public? I am going to give them the perfect venue. The party, Beatrice guessed. The party, I confirmed. They have been bugging me to pay for a family reunion dinner, a bonding event. They want to invite their friends, show off Julian. They think they can corner me there. And you are going to pay for it? Oh, I am going to pay for it, I said, looking down at the city. I am going to pay for the most expensive dinner they have ever eaten, and it will be their last meal at my table. I hung up. I went into the bathroom and washed my face. I applied a layer of expensive night cream, the kind that cost $300 a jar. Then I wiped it off, put on my old pajamas, and drove back to the house. When I walked in, the house was dark. I crept up the stairs, past Julian's room where he snored, dreaming of spending money he didn't earn, past my parents' room where they slept the sleep of the self-righteous. I went into my room and lay down on the lumpy mattress. I stared at the ceiling. For her own good, I smiled in the darkness. Yes, Mother, everything that happens next happens for my own good, and I'm going to enjoy every single second of it. The ambush happened on a Wednesday evening, right after I had finished pretending to struggle with a can of discount soup in the kitchen. My mother walked in, clapping her hands together with a theatrical brightness that usually signaled she wanted something expensive. Behind her, my father and Julian hovered like backup dancers in a tragedy. Kathleen, she said, beaming, we have decided. We are going to fix this family. I set the spoon down. Fix what, Mom? The tension, the distance. We know things have been difficult lately with your pay cut and Julian's massive career transition, but we cannot let money divide us. So, we are hosting a family bonding gala. A gala? I asked. Dinner, Julian corrected, leaning against the counter. At Le Jardin, Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I knew Le Jardin. It was a French restaurant downtown where the tasting menu started at $300 a person. It was the kind of place where they brought you a stool for your handbag and scraped the crumbs off the table with a silver blade between courses. That sounds expensive, I said, keeping my voice low and worried. Mom, I told you, my budget is tight. I cannot afford $1,000 dinner right now. It is not about the money, she snapped, her smile momentarily fracturing. "It is about obligation. You are the eldest. It is your duty to facilitate the healing of this family. Besides, it will look good for Julian. He needs to be seen at places like that. It is part of his brand image." I looked down at my soup. I knew exactly why they chose Le Jardin. It was not for the food. It was for the privacy of the high-backed booths and the intimidation factor, thanks to the bug Miller had planted. I knew the real agenda. They had invited a man named Mr. Henderson. He was a notary public and an old drinking buddy of my father. The plan was to get me a few glasses of wine deep, surround me with love, and then slide a document across the table. The document was a binding agreement that would garnish 40% of my future wages to service a business loan for Julian's consulting firm. They were going to frame it as an investment opportunity, but the fine print was slavery. "Okay," I said slowly. "If it means that much to you, I will make it happen. I will pick up extra shifts next month." My mother let out a breath she had been holding. "Good. That is my good girl. Oh, and Mr. Henderson will be joining us. Just an old friend of your father's. He is lonely." "That is fine," I said. "Actually, since we are inviting friends, I would like to bring a couple of people too. 2 of my colleagues. They have been very supportive during my financial crisis. I want to thank them." My mother's face tightened. "Colleagues? Kathleen, this is a family matter. We do not want strangers there." "They are not strangers. They are my mentors. Besides," I added, baiting the hook, "one of them is very well connected in the corporate world. I thought she might have some advice for Julian." Julian's eyes lit up. "A connection? Is she rich?" "Very," I lied. My mother exchanged a look with my father. They calculated the risk. A rich contact for Julian outweighed the annoyance of my friends. "Fine," she said. "But tell them to dress appropriately. Le Jardin has a dress code." "I will," I promised. The next morning, I called Beatrice. "It is happening," I said. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock, Le Jardin." "I love French food," Beatrice said. "Am I playing the rich aunt or the shark?" "Play the eccentric socialite," I instructed. "Wear your biggest pearls. I am also bringing Marcus. He's going to pose as a tech consultant. We need witnesses. Beatrice, when they drop the hammer, I want credible people there to see it." "And the notary?" "He will be there. They are going to try to make me sign a wage assignment." "Desperate," Beatrice mused. "They are getting desperate. Good. Desperation makes people sloppy." The days leading up to the dinner were a masterclass in manipulation. My mother sent me a text message on Friday morning. It was not a thank you. It was a link to a website. "Since we are celebrating Julian's new chapter, it would be tacky if you showed up empty-handed. He needs a watch. A man in his position needs a serious watch. This one is on sale." I clicked the link. It was a Tag Heuer, $4,000. I stared at the phone. The audacity was so pure it was almost impressive. She wanted me to buy a $4,000 watch for the brother who had stolen my laptop and identity. Using the money from the job she constantly belittled. I replied, "I will take care of it," and I did, but not in the way she thought. On Saturday morning, the day of the dinner, I went into Julian's room. He was posing in front of the mirror, wearing the blazer I had supposedly refused to buy, which my mother had clearly charged to the emergency credit card I had forgotten to cancel. "Hey," I said, holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with wax. It looked heavy. It looked expensive. Julian turned around. "Is that it? The watch?" "Better," I said, lowering my voice. "I did not want to give it to you at the table. It is personal. This is seed capital. A check. To help you get the business off the ground. I cashed out my 401k. Julian's eyes widened. He snatched the envelope from my hand. He could feel the weight of the papers inside. He assumed it was a cashier's check. Maybe $10,000. Maybe 20. "Don't open it yet," I said, putting a hand on his arm. "Promise me, open it tonight at dinner, right when they bring the champagne. It will be our moment. A surprise for Mom and Dad, too. He grinned, a greedy, wolfish smile. You finally came through. Kathy, I knew you were not a total loser. He tucked the envelope into his inside pocket. Right next to his heart, he had no idea that inside that envelope was not a check. It was a court summons. I had hired a process server to deliver it to me, and now I was delivering it to him. It was a formal notification that he was being sued for identity theft and fraud regarding the Quick Cash Now loan, and stapled to the back was a cease and desist order regarding the unauthorized sale of my grandmother's jewelry. He was carrying his own indictment to dinner. The afternoon was a blur of covert operations. I told my parents I was going to the gym, but instead, I drove my car around the back of the house. I had hired a moving company that specialized in discreet, high-speed extractions. They were waiting 2 blocks away. I signaled them. We had 30 minutes while my parents were watching a movie in the living room with the volume turned up. I didn't need to move furniture. I didn't want their dusty sofas or the dining table where I had been yelled at for 20 years. I moved the boxes I had hidden under my bed, my journals, the few books that had kept me sane, the winter coats I had bought with my own money, and most importantly, the small fireproof box I had retrieved from under the floorboards in the closet, the one containing my birth certificate, my passport, and the deed to the burial plot I had bought for myself years ago because I knew they would never pay for a funeral. The movers were silent as ghosts. They loaded the van. I watched them drive away toward the Meridian Tower. My room was now just a shell, a bed, a dresser, and a closet full of clothes I would never wear again. It looked inhabited, but the soul of the room was gone. I was gone. I walked downstairs, my heart pounding a steady rhythm against my ribs. I felt light. I felt like a spy in enemy territory who had just secured the extraction point. I found my father in the garage. He was smoking a cigarette, hiding it behind his back like a teenager. He looked pale. His hands were shaking. "Dad?" I asked. "We need to leave in an hour." He jumped. Dropping the cigarette, he crushed it under his heel. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw terror in his eyes. Not the usual arrogance, but genuine, animal fear. "Kathleen," he said. His voice was raspy. "I need to talk to you. Can it wait? Mom is freaking out about her hair." "No," he said. He grabbed my arm. His grip was weak, clammy. "It cannot wait. It is about the house." I stiffened. "What about the house? I paid the mortgage on the first. Dad, like always." "It is not the mortgage," he whispered, looking over his shoulder to make sure my mother wasn't listening. "I did something, a few months ago. I thought I had a system. The track, Kathleen, the horses. I had a sure thing." I pulled my arm away. "You gambled?" "I needed to contribute," he hissed, defensive now. "I am the man of the house. I wanted to surprise you all with a big win, so I took out a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit." My blood ran cold. The house was in his name. Technically, even though I paid for it, he had the legal right to leverage it. "How much, Dad?" He looked at the oil stains on the concrete floor. $50,000. "50,000, I repeated. "And where is it?" "Gone," he choked out. "It is gone, and the bank called today. They are calling the loan. I missed the last 3 payments. If I do not come up with $50,000 by Monday, they are starting foreclosure proceedings. They are going to take the house. Kathleen, we will be on the street." He looked up at me, his eyes wet with tears that I knew were only half real. The other half was manipulation. "You have to help me," he begged. "I know you have some savings. I know you have a retirement account. You have to liquidate it. For the family. If your mother finds out, she will kill me." I stared at him. This man who had sold my childhood for comfort. This man who had watched me work 2 jobs in college and never offered a dime. This man who had just confessed to gambling away the roof over his head, the roof I paid for, was now asking me to clean up his mess one last time. He thought I was the safety net. He thought I was the endless well. $50,000, I said, testing the words. "Please, Kathy, I will pay you back. I swear. Just fix it. I looked at his pathetic, trembling face. A normal daughter might have broken. A normal daughter might have screamed or cried. But I was not a normal daughter anymore. I was a CEO of my own destiny. Okay, I said. He slumped against the workbench, relief washing over him. Oh, thank God. Thank God. You are a good girl. Kathleen, I knew I could count on you. Get dressed, Dad, I said, turning away so he couldn't see the cold, hard smile that was forming on my lips. We do not want to be late for dinner. Yes, I will be ready. I walked back into the house. He thought I said, okay, to paying the debt. I had actually said, okay to the end. $50,000 was nothing to me now. I could write a check for it right now and not even notice the dent in my balance. But I wasn't going to. He had just given me the final weapon I needed. He had given me the leverage to destroy them completely. I went to the bathroom to finish getting ready. I put on my makeup, careful to hide the glow of triumph in my cheeks. I put on the dress I had bought from a thrift store to keep up the charade. Tonight, at Le Jardin, surrounded by crystal glasses and white tablecloths, everything was going to burn, and I was going to be the one holding the match. Kathleen, my mother yelled from the bottom of the stairs. Stop dawdling. We have a reservation. Coming, Mother, I called back. I checked my purse, phone, wallet, keys to the penthouse. I was ready. The trap was set. The bait was taken, and the prey was walking willingly into the slaughterhouse. The private dining room at Le Jardin was a study in aggressive opulence. The walls were upholstered in crushed velvet the color of dried blood, and the chandelier hanging above the table was so massive it looked like a frozen explosion of crystal shards waiting to impale us. It was the kind of room designed to make you feel important, or, in the case of my family, to make you feel like you had finally tricked the world into believing you mattered. My parents and Julian had arrived first. Naturally, they sat on the high-backed leather banquettes like monarchs of a crumbling kingdom. My mother was wearing a gold lame dress that was tight enough to cut off circulation, paired with a necklace of fake diamonds so large they looked like ice cubes. My father wore a tuxedo that smelled faintly of mothballs and cigar smoke. His face flushed with the anticipation of expensive liquor, but it was Julian who truly looked the part of the court jester. He was wearing the blazer I had supposedly refused to buy. The charge was already pending on my statement, and he had slicked his hair back with enough gel to waterproof a seal. He was leaning back, swirling a glass of cognac he definitely did not know how to drink, looking at the menu with a feigned boredom. "Kathleen?" my mother shrieked when I walked in, her voice bouncing off the crystal. "You are late, and look at you. Is that what you wore to work?" I looked down at my gray cardigan and sensible slacks. "I came straight from the office. Mom, I did not have time to change." "Pity," she sniffed. "Well, sit down. Do not ruin the aesthetic. We have guests coming." I stepped aside to reveal my entourage. "They are already here." I introduced Beatrice Sterling first. I had told my parents she was an elderly philanthropist looking for fresh vision. Beatrice played the part to perfection. She shuffled in leaning on a cane she absolutely did not need, wearing a vintage Chanel suit and a string of pearls that were actually worth more than my parents' entire house. "Charmed," Beatrice quavered, adjusting her thick glasses. "So lovely to meet the family behind what was it? The genius?" "The visionary," my mother corrected instantly, preening. "This is Julian, our son." Behind Beatrice stood Marcus, my CFO. He had ditched his usual sharp suit for a black turtleneck and jeans, looking every bit the eccentric Silicon Valley investor. I introduced him simply as Mark, a consultant I work with. "Please, sit. My father waved his hand grandly. "Garçon, more champagne, the vintage stuff." The waiter, a man with infinite patience and dead eyes, poured the Dom Perignon. My father gulped it down like it was Gatorade. The dinner began as a grotesque theater of consumption. My parents ordered the seafood tower, the foie gras, and the Wagyu beef tasting menu for everyone without asking. They treated the waitstaff with a snapping, condescending rudeness that made my skin crawl. "So," Beatrice said, picking at her salad, "Julian, dear, Kathleen tells me you are embarking on a new venture. Tell me about your business model." Julian straightened up, puffing out his chest. "Well, you see, it is about synergy. NutriGlow is not just vitamins. It is a lifestyle paradigm. I am building a downstream network of high-value individuals. I am essentially a CEO of my own distribution node." "He is a leader," my mother interrupted, placing a hand on Julian's arm. "He has always had that spark, that charisma. You cannot teach that. You are born with it." "Fascinating," Marcus said, keeping his face perfectly neutral. "And the revenue streams?" "Limitless," Julian declared. "Once I onboard my first 10 brand ambassadors, the passive income generates itself. It is geometric growth. Pyramid growth, one might say," Beatrice murmured into her wineglass. "Exactly," Julian beamed, missing the insult entirely. "You get it." My mother leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with greed as she looked at Beatrice's pearls. "Julian is the creative soul of this family. He feels things deeply. That is why he is so successful with people." "And Kathleen?" Beatrice asked, turning her sharp gaze to me. "She works in technology, yes? That must be very demanding." My mother laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Oh, Kathleen? She is the worker bee. She likes the tedium, sitting in a cubicle, typing codes, staring at a screen all day. It is very dry, very safe." "Safe is good," my father grunted, shoving a piece of steak into his mouth. "Someone has to pay the bills while the geniuses change the world, right?" "It is a bit sad. Really," my mother continued, pouring herself more wine. "She never had Julian's flair. We tried to get her into dance, into painting. Nothing stuck. She is just practical. She lacks imagination. That is why she is still just a mid-level employee at 32. No ambition to rise above." I sat there, cutting my steak into tiny, precise squares, the knife scraped against the porcelain. Mid-level employee, lacks imagination. "I think Kathleen is very distinct," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Code is its own kind of art." "It is typing," Julian scoffed. "It is just zeros and ones. A monkey could do it if you trained him long enough. No offense, Kathy." "None taken," I said. I took a sip of water. "Actually, speaking of your venture, Julian, I have something for you." The table went quiet. Julian's eyes darted to the thick cream envelope I had placed next to his bread plate. "Is that it?" he whispered. "Open it," I said softly. "It is the seed capital I promised. For your future." My mother clapped her hands. "Oh, finally. See? I told you she would come through. Open it. Julian. Let's see how much she believes in you." Julian picked up the envelope. He tore the wax seal with a greedy urgency. He pulled out the folded documents. He was expecting a cashier's check. He was expecting 5 figures. I watched his face. I watched the blood drain out of it as he read the header. Superior Court of Washington. Summons and complaint. Plaintiff: Kathleen Ridgway. Defendant: Julian Ridgway. Cause of action: identity theft, fraud, forgery. He froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He looked at the guests, the rich investor and the consultant, and he realized he couldn't scream. He couldn't flip the table. He was the successful businessman. He couldn't be seen being served a lawsuit by his own sister. "Is it a big check?" my father asked, squinting. "How many zeros?" Julian shoved the papers back into the envelope with trembling hands. He shoved the envelope under the table. He picked up his wineglass and drained it in one swallow. "It is generous," Julian choked out. His voice was strangled. He looked at me with pure hatred, but fear was the dominant color in his eyes. "Very unexpected. I am glad you like it," I said, smiling sweetly. "Read the fine print later. It is important." "Well," my mother raised her glass, To family supporting family. Now, on to the main business. She gestured to Mr. Henderson, the notary, who had been eating silently at the end of the table. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and pulled a folder from his briefcase. Kathleen, my father said, his tone shifting from jovial to serious. We have a little opportunity, a formality. Really? Mr. Henderson slid the document across the table toward me. It was the wage assignment, the loan guarantee. What is this? I asked, feigning ignorance. It is just a signature, my mother said breezily. For Julian's business line of credit, the bank needs a guarantor with a steady income history. It just says that if, and this will never happen, but if the business has a slow month, you will cover the payments. It is standard procedure. I looked at the document. It authorized the bank to garnish 40% of my wages directly from my employer. It was financial suicide. 40%? I asked. That is a lot. Mom? Do not be dramatic, she snapped. It is temporary. Julian is going to be making millions by Christmas. You will never even notice. But what if I lose my job? I asked. Or what if Julian does not make millions? You have to believe in him. My mother slammed her hand on the table, rattling the silverware. Why are you always so negative? This is why you are alone. Kathleen, you repel success with your doubt. Just sign the damn paper. Kathy, Julian hissed, sweat beading on his forehead. He needed this loan to pay for lawyers now. I picked up the heavy Mont Blanc pen Mr. Henderson offered me. I held it over the signature line. The entire table held its breath. Beatrice was watching me over the rim of her glasses. Marcus was gripping his fork. I looked up at my parents. I looked them dead in the eye. If I sign this, I said, my voice quiet but clear, do you promise? Do you swear on your lives that you will never ask me for anything again? No more rent money, no more bail money, no more emergencies. Is this the end? My mother softened her face into a mask of maternal love. She reached out and touched my hand. Her skin was cold. Oh, honey, she cooed. Of course, this is the last thing. Once Julian is established, he will be the one taking care of us. He will be taking care of you. We just need this one little push. I promise. I promise too, my father said, nodding vigorously. Cross my heart. Last time, Julian muttered, staring at his plate. It was the lie I needed. The final, documented lie. Okay, I whispered. I lowered the pen to the paper, but I did not sign. At that exact moment, Marcus shifted in his seat. He reached into his messenger bag, ostensibly to get his phone, but instead, he pulled out a glossy magazine. He fumbled it. The magazine slid across the polished table, spinning like a roulette wheel, and came to a stop right in front of my father's plate. It was the latest issue of Forbes. The cover was a portrait of a woman standing on a balcony, looking powerful, sleek, and terrifyingly competent. She was wearing a white suit. The headline was printed in bold. Gold letters. The Silent Architect. How Kathleen Ridgway built Viridian Tech's billion-dollar backbone. Net worth. Estimated $25 million. My father looked down. He saw the face. He looked up at me. He looked back at the magazine. Who? He stammered. Who is this? Oops, Marcus said, his voice lacking any apology. Dropped my light reading. My mother snatched the magazine. Her eyes scanned the cover. She gasped. It was a sound like a tire blowing out. Kathleen? She whispered. She looked at the photo, then at me. This says 25 million. Julian read the number upside down. His head snapped up. $25 million? The silence that followed was heavier than the chandelier above us. The air left the room. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of my mother's heavy breathing. I put the pen down. I did not sign the paper. I picked up my napkin and dabbed the corner of my mouth. Then I looked at Beatrice. I think the charade is over. Beatrice, I said, my voice dropping the tremble, dropping the hesitation, dropping the daughter act entirely. You can stop being the senile aunt now. Beatrice straightened up. She took off her thick glasses and placed them on the table. Her eyes were sharp as daggers. Thank God, Beatrice said, her voice crisp and authoritative. The acting was exhausting, and the wine is mediocre. I turned back to my parents. They were frozen, staring at me as if I had just shapeshifted into a dragon. You, my mother stammered, pointing a shaking finger at the magazine. You have money? I finished for her. Yes, I have money. I have more money than you can comprehend. I have had it since the day of my graduation, the day you left me in the rain. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, interlacing my fingers. And just so we are clear, I said, a cold smile spreading across my face, I brought you here tonight not to sign your loan. I brought you here to tell you that the bank isn't the only one foreclosing on you. Julian looked at the envelope in his lap, then at the magazine, then at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't getting a loan, he was getting erased. Garçon? I called out, my voice ringing with authority. We are ready for the check, and please, bring the projector screen. We have a presentation. Julian snatched the magazine from the table with a violence that knocked over his empty wine glass. The crystal stem shattered against the edge of the porcelain charger plate, sending a spray of shards onto the pristine white tablecloth. But no one flinched. The sound of breaking glass was irrelevant compared to the sound of Julian's world fracturing. He held the magazine with both hands, his knuckles turning white. His eyes darted back and forth across the cover, desperately looking for a disclaimer, a joke, or a misspelling that would prove this was a prank. But Forbes did not make jokes. The paper was heavy, glossy, and undeniable. Give me that, he snarled, his voice cracking. He didn't just read the headline, he devoured it. His lips moving silently at first, then forming the words that would haunt him for the rest of his mediocre life. Kathleen Ridgway, he read aloud, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. The silent architect, the woman who wrote the code that runs the world, $25 million. He looked up at me. His face was a rictus of shock and betrayal. It was the face of a man who realized the person he had been stepping on to reach the top shelf was actually a giant who had simply been kneeling down. You, he whispered. You have $25 million? You? The one who drives a 10-year-old car? The one who wouldn't buy me a watch? The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum that sucked the oxygen out of the room. The other diners in the restaurant seemed to fade into a blur. The only thing in focus was the table of fools in front of me. Then, the transformation happened. I watched my parents. I watched the exact moment the information traveled from their ears to the primitive, greedy centers of their brains. My father's jaw, which had been slack with confusion, suddenly snapped shut. His eyes, previously clouded with the fear of foreclosure and gambling debts, cleared instantly. He did not see his daughter. He saw a bailout. He saw a talking slot machine that had just hit the jackpot. He sat up straighter, smoothing the lapels of his cheap tuxedo. The $50,000 he owed was suddenly a rounding error. He was calculating how much a yacht cost. But it was my mother who delivered the performance of a lifetime. The disdain that had been etched into her face for 3 decades, the curled lip, the narrowed eyes, the constant air of disappointment, vanished. It was wiped away as if by a magic eraser, replaced by a radiant, terrifying warmth. Her eyes filled with tears, not tears of remorse, but tears of joy for herself. She looked at me as if I were the golden calf and she was the high priestess. Kathleen, she gasped. Leaping from her chair, she rushed around the table toward me, her arms outstretched, her bracelets jingling. Oh, my baby, my brilliant, successful baby girl. I knew it. I always knew you were special. She tried to wrap her arms around me. She tried to pull me into the suffocating embrace I had craved when I was 6, when I was 10, when I was 20. I did not move. I did not flinch. I simply held up one hand, palm out, fingers spread. "Sit down, Mother," I said. My voice was not loud. It was not the voice of the Kathleen they knew, the Kathleen who apologized for existing, the Kathleen who mumbled and looked at her shoes. This was the voice that commanded boardrooms. It was cool, resonant, and utterly devoid of warmth. My mother froze. Her arms hovered in the air. Rejected. She looked confused, as if her favorite appliance had just spoken back to her. "Kathleen, honey," she laughed nervously, lowering her arms but hovering close. "Why are you being so cold? We are celebrating. This is a miracle. Why did you hide it from us, you naughty girl, making us worry about bills when you were sitting on a fortune? We could have been living like this for years." "We?" I asked. I stood up. I pushed my chair back slowly. The sound of wood scraping against the floor was deliberate. I stood to my full height. I was wearing heels. And for the first time, I didn't slouch to make Julian look taller. I towered over my mother. I looked down at her with the clinical detachment of a scientist examining a particularly virulent strain of bacteria. "There is no we," I said. "There is only me, and there is you." "Don't be silly," my father chuckled, finally finding his voice. He waved a hand dismissively, though his eyes remained fixed on the magazine Marcus had left on the table. "We are family. What is yours is ours. That is how the Ridgeways operate. We support each other, just like you are going to support Julian's business now, right? With this kind of capital, we can skip the loan. You can just fund him directly. We can open a family office." "Yeah," Julian breathed, the color returning to his cheeks as the greed overrode the shame. "A family office. I could run the investment arm. I have great instincts. Kathy, we could double that $25 million in a year." I looked at Julian, the boy who had stolen my laptop, the boy who had forged my signature, the boy who thought he was entitled to my lifeblood because he was born male and charming. "You couldn't run a lemonade stand, Julian," I said. "Hey," my mother snapped, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second before she remembered the money. "Don't speak to your brother like that. He is just excited. We all are. This changes everything." "You are right," I said. "It changes everything, but not in the way you think." I turned to the waiter, who had been standing in the shadows near the service entrance. I gave him a subtle nod. "Lights, please," I said. The waiter, whom I had tipped $500 before the dinner began, immediately dimmed the crystal chandelier. A motorized screen descended from the ceiling on the far wall of the private room. My parents turned in their seats. Confused, they were expecting a slideshow of family photos. Perhaps a tribute to their parenting? The projector hummed to life. A beam of blue light cut through the darkness and hit the screen. It was not a photo. It was a spreadsheet. It was the ghost spreadsheet. The columns were massive, projected in high definition. Every row, every date, every dollar amount was visible even from the back of the room. "What is this?" my father asked, squinting. "This," I said, picking up a laser pointer I had pulled from my purse, "is the ledger. You said earlier that family supports family. You said it is a two-way street. I decided to audit that statement." I clicked the button. The red dot danced over the first section. "Mortgage payments," I narrated, my voice steady. 2016 through 2026. Total value, $288,000. I paid for the roof over your heads while you told me I was living there out of charity. My mother's face went pale. "Kathleen, this is tacky. Discussing money at the dinner table." "Quiet," I said. It was a command, not a request. I clicked again. The screen scrolled down. Julian's legal fees, Julian's car insurance, Julian's failed DJ equipment, Julian's inspiration trip. I paused on that line. "Do you remember that trip, Mom, 3 years ago? While I was in the hospital with sepsis, fighting for my life. You drained my emergency fund. $12,000. You bought a motorcycle." "He was depressed," my mother shrieked, finding her defensive footing. "He needed it. You were fine. You had a job. I was dying, I corrected her. And you looted me. I clicked again. The screen changed. The spreadsheet vanished, replaced by a collage of screenshots. They were text messages, hundreds of them. I had archived every cruel, dismissive, demanding text they had sent me over the last decade. I need money for the club. You are so selfish. Why can't you be more like Julian? Your job is boring. Nobody wants to hear about your code. The guests, Beatrice, Marcus, and the notary, watched in silence. Mr. Henderson, the notary, looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He was witnessing a public execution. These are your words, I said, walking toward the screen. This is the support you gave me. You didn't raise a daughter. You raised an ATM. That is not fair, my father protested, slamming his hand on the table. We loved you. We gave you a home. You gave me a debt, I yelled back, my composure cracking just enough to let the fire show through. You gave me a lifetime of feeling like I had to buy my way into my own family. I clicked the button one last time. The screen went black for a second. Then a single image appeared. It was blown up to fill the entire wall. It was the screenshot of the text message from the night of my graduation. Don't expect help. We are busy celebrating Julian's modeling contract. Virtual. It is a big night for him. Take the bus. You're smart. Figure it out. The date stamp was visible. May 15th, 8:45 p.m. I turned to face them. The red light of the laser pointer died in my hand. Do you remember this? I asked softly. My mother stared at the screen. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. She couldn't deny it. It was her number, her words. I was standing in the rain, I said to the silent room. I had just graduated. I had $12 in my pocket, and you told me to take the bus because you were eating lobster to celebrate a fake modeling contract. It was a misunderstanding, my mother stammered, sweat breaking out on her upper lip. We thought you had a ride. We didn't know it was raining. It is always raining in Seattle. Mother, I said cold. And you didn't care. That was the moment. That was the exact second when I stopped being your daughter. I looked at Julian. He was slumped in his chair, the envelope with the lawsuit still clutched in his hand under the table. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a 28-year-old child. You wanted me to sign a paper tonight, I said, gesturing to the wage assignment document that still lay on the table next to the Forbes magazine. You wanted a guarantee. I reached out and picked up the document. The paper crinkled in the silence. Well, here is my guarantee. I ripped the paper in half. The sound was loud, sharp, and final. I ripped it again, and again. I let the pieces flutter down onto the plate of untouched foie gras like confetti. I am not signing your loan, I said. I am not buying your house. I am not funding your lifestyle. My father stood up, his face purple with rage and panic. You ungrateful little witch! After everything we did for you, you owe us. We are your parents. You cannot just cut us off. Watch me, I said. I walked back to my purse and pulled out a different document. It was a single sheet of paper, notarized by Beatrice earlier that day. This, I said, placing it on the table, is a notice of eviction. What? My mother screamed. Eviction? It is our house. It was your house, I corrected. Until Dad defaulted on the second mortgage, the bank was going to foreclose on Monday, but I stepped in. My father's eyes widened. You paid it? I bought the debt, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I own the note. Dad, I am the bank now, and you are 3 months behind. According to the terms of the mortgage, I am exercising my right to reclaim the property. You can't do that, Julian stuttered. Where are we supposed to live? I don't know, I said. You are smart. Figure it out. I echoed the words of the text message back to them, savoring the taste of them. You have 30 days to vacate the premises, I continued. If you are not out, the sheriff will remove you. And Julian, open your envelope. Julian pulled the crumpled envelope from under the table. That is a lawsuit, I explained. For the credit card fraud, and the identity theft, and the jewelry. My lawyers are very expensive, and they are very aggressive. I suggest you find a public defender, because you certainly cannot afford a private one. My mother looked around the room, her eyes wild. Looking for an ally, she looked at Beatrice. You, she cried, pointing at the older woman. You are a mother, aren't you? Tell her. Tell her she can't do this to her own flesh and blood. Beatrice stood up slowly. She picked up her glass of wine and took a sip. Actually, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with disdain, I am not a mother, I am a shark. And Kathleen? She is the one holding the harpoon. Beatrice looked at me and nodded. Shall we go? Ms. Ridgway? I believe we have a better bottle of champagne waiting for us at the penthouse. We shall, I said. I turned my back on them. I heard my mother start to sob. A loud, wailing sound that was meant to manipulate, but now only sounded pathetic. I heard my father cursing. I heard Julian tearing open the envelope. Kathleen, my mother screamed. Come back here. You are my daughter. You belong to us. I paused at the door. I looked back one last time. No, I said. I don't belong to anyone. I just bought my freedom, and the price was cheap. I walked out of the private room, the heavy velvet curtains swinging shut behind me, sealing them in their tomb of debt and delusion. I walked through the main dining room, head held high, the click of my heels on the marble floor sounding like a victory march. The show is over, I whispered to myself, and for the first time in my life, the applause inside my head was deafening. I had made it exactly 3 steps past the heavy velvet curtains of the private dining room when the screaming began. It was not the cry of a heartbroken mother losing her child. It was the shrill, panic-stricken shriek of a parasite realizing its host had just been severed. You cannot do this! My mother's voice tore through the elegant silence of the restaurant, causing heads to turn in the main dining area. Get back here! You ungrateful, heartless girl! We gave you life. I stopped. I should have kept walking. I should have marched straight to the valet stand, retrieved my car, and driven into my new life. But there is a gravitational pull to a lifetime of guilt. It does not vanish just because you have a bank account with 8 zeros. I turned around, not to apologize, but to witness the autopsy of their delusion. I stepped back into the room. The scene was a tableau of chaos. My father was clutching his chest, feigning a heart attack that no one believed. My mother was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white, her face a mask of twisted rage that ruined her expensive makeup. Julian was pacing like a caged animal, kicking the chair I had vacated. You think you are special? My mother hissed when she saw me return. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You think because you stumbled into some lucky money you are better than us? We made you. We sacrificed our dreams so you could have that education. And this is how you repay us? By humiliating us? By acting like a stingy miser while we drown? Stingy, I repeated the word, tasting the iron in it. I have given you $450,000 over 10 years. I have decimated my savings. I have lived on ramen noodles while you ate steak. And you call me stingy. It is family money, she screamed, slapping the table. It does not belong to you. It belongs to the Ridgway legacy. You are just the vessel. How dare you hoard it while your brother, your talented, brilliant brother, struggles to find his footing? You are selfish. You have always been selfish, even when you were a child, hiding your allowance. We knew you were rotten. She was rewriting history in real time. She was building a narrative where she was the victim of a cold, unfeeling daughter. She is mentally ill, my father groaned, looking at the waitstaff who were hovering nervously by the door. She is having a breakdown. She does not know what she is saying. The stress of the job. We need to get her help. We need to get control of her accounts before she hurts herself. He was still trying to play the conservatorship card. Even now, staring down the barrel of eviction, He thought he could gaslight the world into handing him the keys to my kingdom. "Enough!" A voice cut through the hysteria like a scalpel. Beatrice Sterling stood up. She did not tremble. She did not lean on her cane. She picked up the cane and held it like a weapon. She reached into her oversized designer handbag and pulled out a leather portfolio. "Who are you?" my father snapped. "Shut up, you old bat. This is a family matter." "I am not an old bat," Beatrice said, her voice dropping an octave, resonating with the authority of 40 years in high-stakes litigation. "And I am certainly not your friend. My name is Beatrice Sterling. I am a senior partner at Sterling, Vance, and Lowe, and I am Ms. Ridgway's retained legal counsel." The room went deadly silent. Sterling, Vance, and Lowe was the kind of law firm that politicians hired when they got caught with dead bodies. It was a name that instilled fear even in people who didn't know the law. "Lawyer?" Julian whispered. "Why do you have a lawyer?" "Because of you." "Mr. Ridgway," Beatrice said. Turning her cold gaze on him, she opened the portfolio. "You called your sister selfish. You called her a miser. Let us look at the facts." She pulled out a document and held it up. It was a blown-up copy of the loan application Julian had submitted to Quick Cash Now. "Exhibit A," Beatrice announced, pacing the room like it was a courtroom. "A loan application for $5,000. Applicant, Kathleen Ridgway. IP address, this family's home router. Signature, a clumsy forgery that my forensic handwriting expert debunked in 10 minutes. This is a felony. Julian, identity theft, wire fraud. In the state of Washington, that carries a penalty of up to 10 years in prison." Julian's face went the color of ash. He backed away, hitting the wall. "I meant to pay it back. It was a bridge loan." "Exhibit B," Beatrice continued, ignoring him. She pulled out a stack of bank records. The misappropriation of funds, specifically, the $12,000 withdrawn from Ms. Ridgway's account while she was incapacitated in the hospital. You claimed it was for household emergencies. The receipts show a purchase at a motorcycle dealership and a luxury resort in Cabo San Lucas. My parents were silent now. The accusation of theft was ugly, but hearing it detailed by a stranger with a law degree stripped away their ability to spin it. "You stole from a dying woman," Beatrice said, looking at my mother with pure disgust. "You are not victims. You are embezzlers." "We are her parents," my mother shrieked, her voice cracking. "We have a right. We raised her." "You have no rights," Beatrice countered. "You have liabilities." I stepped forward then. I walked past Beatrice and stood in front of the table. I placed my hands on the back of a chair and leaned in. "You do not seem to understand the new dynamic," I said calmly. "You are operating under the assumption that we are still playing by the rules of biology. We are not. We are playing by the rules of capitalism, and in this market, you are insolvent." I looked at my father. "I bought the note on the house." "Dad, I did not pay it off. I bought it. That means I own the debt. Verify it if you want. Call the bank. They will tell you that the mortgage has been assigned to KVR Holdings, LLC. That is me." "You wouldn't kick us out," my father stammered. "Where would we go?" "I am your creditor," I said. "Not your daughter." "A creditor does not care where you go. A creditor cares about payment. You are 90 days past due. You have defaulted on the terms of the agreement. I am accelerating the loan." "Accelerating?" "It means the full amount is due immediately," I explained, as if speaking to a slow child. $400,000, plus the $50,000 you stole from the equity line. Can you write me a check tonight?" My father looked at his shoes. "Then you are foreclosed," I said. "It is a business decision. The asset is underperforming. The tenants are destructive. It is time to liquidate." "You bitch!" The scream came from Julian. The reality of his situation had finally penetrated the fog of his narcissism. He realized there was no modeling contract, no vitamin empire, and now, no house. He was looking at a future of poverty and prison, and he blamed the person who had refused to save him. He lunged. It happened fast, but to me, it felt like slow motion. Julian grabbed a steak knife from the table and threw himself at me. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. "I will kill you," he screamed. "You think you can ruin me?" I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't have to. From the table directly to our right, a man in a gray suit who had been quietly eating a salad stood up. He moved with a speed that defied his size. Before Julian could get within 3 feet of me, the man intercepted him. He grabbed Julian's wrist, twisted it with a sickening crunch, and slammed him face first onto the carpet. The knife clattered away across the floor. Julian howled in pain. The man, my head of personal security, a former Navy SEAL named Davis, placed a knee on Julian's back and held him there effortlessly. "Stay down," Davis said, his voice a low rumble. My mother screamed. She fell to her knees, crawling toward Julian. "Get off him! You are hurting him. He is an artist. His hands. Watch his hands." She didn't care that he had just tried to stab me. She cared that his hands, the hands that had never done a day's work in their lives, might be bruised. I looked down at them, my brother, pinned to the floor like a common criminal, my mother, weeping over the aggressor while ignoring the victim. "Davis, let him up," I said. Davis looked at me, unsure. "Ma'am, he is armed and unstable. Let him up. He won't try it again." Davis released the pressure. Julian scrambled backward, clutching his wrist, sobbing. He looked at me with terror now. He realized that I had soldiers. I had walls. I was untouchable. "Here is the deal," I said. My voice was devoid of anger. It was just facts. "You have 30 days. That is 1 month. Beatrice has the eviction notice. If you are not out of the house by noon on the 30th day, the sheriff will arrive, and I will press charges for the assault, the fraud, and the theft." "Kathleen, please," my father begged, tears finally streaming down his face. "We are old. We have nowhere to go. The market is terrible. Rents are so high." "Then get a job," I said. "Walmart is hiring greeters. I hear they pay $15 an hour." "You can't leave us like this," my mother wailed. "What will people say? The family will despise you. Aunt Laura, Cousin Mike, everyone will know you abandoned your parents." "Let them know," I said. "I will send them the spreadsheet." "Actually," a voice spoke up from the far end of the room. I turned. Sitting in the shadows of the corner booth was Aunt Laura. She was a distant cousin of my father's, a quiet woman who worked as a librarian. My parents had invited her because they thought she had money saved up, and they were grooming her for a loan. 2. She had been silent the entire meal. Laura stood up. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, but her eyes were furious. "Laura, tell her," my mother pleaded. "Tell her she is being a monster." Laura looked at my mother, then at me. "They told me you were dying," Laura said. Her voice was trembling. I frowned. "What?" 2 years ago, Laura said, walking into the light. "Your father called me. He was crying. He said you had a recurrence of leukemia. He said the insurance wouldn't cover the experimental treatment." I felt the blood drain from my face. I have never had leukemia. "I know that now," Laura said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "But he was so convincing. He said you were wasting away. He said you were too proud to ask for help. I gave them $10,000. It was my rainy day fund. I emptied it. I thought I was saving your life." She turned to my father, who was now trying to make himself invisible. "And then last year," Laura continued, her voice rising in anger, "Uncle Bob called. He said you needed money for a lawyer because you were in an abusive relationship and needed to escape. I borrowed $5,000 for my car title to send to them." I stared at my parents. The depth of their depravity was bottomless. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had used my fictional suffering, my fictional death, to rob the people who actually cared about me. "You told people I was dying?" I whispered. "To buy what? Lobster?" A new TV? We needed the money, my father shouted. Cornered. You were being tight. We had expenses. What difference does it make? You are fine. You are rich now. You can pay Laura back if you care so much. That was it. The final thread snapped. Any lingering doubt, any microscopic grain of guilt that had remained in my soul, evaporated. They were not just bad parents. They were bad people. They were malignant. I looked at Laura. I will write you a check for $15,000 tonight. Laura, with interest. No, Kathleen, Laura said softly. You don't have to. I want to, I said, because unlike them, I pay my debts. I turned back to the trio of monsters. Get out, I said. Kathleen, my mother started. Get out, I roared. The sound came from deep within my chest. A primal release of 30 years of silence. Get out of my sight. You have 30 days. If I see you before then, if you text me, if you call me, if you even think about me, I will have Julian arrested immediately. I will bury you in so much litigation you will need a shovel to breathe. Come on. My father grabbed my mother's arm. She is crazy. Let's go. Julian, move. They scrambled. They gathered their fake purses and their stolen dignity and fled the room. Julian cradled his wrist, whimpering as he scuttled past Davis, giving the bodyguard a wide berth. The room fell silent again. I stood there, breathing hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Beatrice walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. That was impressive. It was necessary, I said. My voice was shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline, from the sheer, intoxicating rush of finally cutting the cancer out of my life. Are you okay? Laura asked, stepping forward. I looked at her. I looked at the broken glass on the floor. I looked at the ripped pieces of the loan agreement scattered on the table. I don't know, I said honestly. I feel light. I feel like I just put down a backpack I've been carrying since I was 5 years old. That is called freedom, my dear, Beatrice said. It can be dizzying at first. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city of Seattle. It was raining again. The drops streaked against the glass, distorting the lights below. Somewhere down there, 3 people were getting into a car, terrified of the future, and somewhere up here, in the penthouse of the world, I was just beginning. Davis, I said, turning to my security guard. Yes, Ms. Ridgway? Change the locks on the house tomorrow. I don't trust them not to strip the copper wiring out of the walls before they leave. Understood. And Beatrice? Yes. Draft the lawsuit against Julian. Have it ready. I want to file it at 12 o'clock and 1 minute on the 30th day if the keys are not in my hand. Beatrice smiled. A shark recognizing her own kind. It is already drafted. Kathleen, I just need to add the date. I picked up my purse. I picked up the Forbes magazine. Let's go home, I said. I have a dog to adopt. The counter-intervention was over. The patients had been discharged, and the doctor was finally, blissfully, off duty. The heavy glass doors of Le Jardin swung shut behind me, severing the sound of my mother's wailing as effectively as a guillotine. Outside, the Seattle night was crisp and washed clean by the rain. A sleek black limousine, arranged by Beatrice, waited at the curb. The driver, a man with shoulders the width of a refrigerator, held the door open. I slid into the leather interior. Beatrice followed, adjusting her skirt. As the door clicked shut, sealing us in a bubble of silence and new car smell, I pulled my phone from my clutch. I had one final transaction to execute. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the credit card management screen. It was the card ending in 4098, the emergency card my mother had in her purse, the one they were currently relying on to pay the bill for the untouched foie gras and the shattered wine glass. The bill would likely be over $3,000. My thumb hovered over the report lost/stolen button. Do it, Beatrice said softly. Pouring 2 glasses of sparkling water from the car's minibar, I tapped the screen. Card canceled. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. In about 10 minutes, the waiter would return to the private room with a polite, tight-lipped expression. He would inform my father that the card had been declined. My father would try the other card, the one maxed out on gambling sites. That would decline too. Julian had no money. They would be trapped in a 5-star restaurant, surrounded by the wreckage of their dignity, forced to call friends who no longer answered or perhaps wash dishes in their tuxedos. To fresh starts, Beatrice said, raising her glass. To closing accounts, I replied. We drove away, leaving the chaos behind us. I did not look back. The next 48 hours were a study in digital harassment. I had expected them to be angry. I had not expected the sheer volume of their desperation. My phone became a vibrating brick of toxicity. It started with threats. You better fix this. Kathleen, the manager is threatening to call the police. Send money now, if you do not unlock the card. I am going to tell everyone what a bitch you are. Then, when I did not reply, it shifted to bargaining. Kathy, please, Dad is having palpitations. We are scared. We just want to go home. We are sorry about the dinner. Let's talk. We can work out a payment plan for the house. Just call off the eviction, please. And finally, when the silence stretched into day 2, it descended into pure, vitriolic hatred. I wish you had died in that hospital. You are dead to us. I sat in my penthouse, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that cost more than my father's car, and watched the messages roll in like waves crashing against a cliff. I did not block them, not yet. I forwarded every single one to the private server Beatrice had set up. They were digging their own graves, one text at a time, and I was simply collecting the dirt. The first domino fell on Tuesday. I was in a budget meeting at Viridian when my personal line rang. It was a collect call from the King County Correctional Facility. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, I received a call from a public defender. I stepped out of the conference room, overlooking the gray expanse of the Puget Sound. Ms. Ridgway? The lawyer sounded young and tired. I am representing your brother, Julian Ridgway. He was arrested this morning at SeaTac Airport. I figured, I said, leaning against the glass. What did he do? He attempted to purchase a one-way ticket to Cabo San Lucas using a credit card reported as stolen. When the transaction flagged, the airport police detained him. They ran his ID and found the outstanding warrant for identity theft and fraud that your legal team filed yesterday. I pictured Julian at the ticket counter, wearing his fake designer sunglasses, sweating as the agent typed on her keyboard. He probably thought he could run away to the beach and wait for me to fix everything, just like the time he crashed the car or the time he flooded the high school gym. He is requesting bail, Ms. Ridgway, the lawyer said. He says you will cover it. He says it is all a big misunderstanding between siblings. There is no misunderstanding, I said cold. And there will be no bail. My brother is a flight risk. He was literally caught at the airport, trying to flee the country to avoid prosecution. I suggest you tell the judge that. But I am the victim in the fraud case. Counselor, I am not going to bail out the perpetrator. Good luck with your client. I hung up. I felt a twinge of something in my stomach. Nausea, perhaps, or the phantom limb of sisterly duty. But I swallowed it down with a sip of iced coffee. Julian was finally facing a consequence that I couldn't write a check to make disappear. The second domino fell on Wednesday. My parents, realizing they couldn't bully me privately, decided to take the war public. I woke up to a frantic email from Viridian's head of public relations. Sarah. Subject, urgent, viral video alert. I clicked the link. It was a Facebook Live video, reposted on TikTok, that had already garnered 50,000 views. My mother was sitting on the couch in the living room I technically owned. She was not wearing makeup. Her hair was disheveled. She looked frail and elderly, a transformation she had clearly engineered for the camera. My father sat next to her, looking down at his hands. Hello, friends, my mother whispered, wiping a non-existent tear. We do not usually do this. We are private people, but we are heartbroken. Our daughter Kathleen. She choked on my name. She has abandoned us. We sacrificed everything to put her through school. We mortgaged our home, and now that she has become a millionaire tech mogul, she has evicted us. She threw us out on the street because we are old and not useful to her brand anymore." My father looked up, his eyes wet. "We just wanted to see her. She set her bodyguards on us. She had her own brother arrested because he asked for help with groceries. We are terrified. We have nowhere to go." The comments section was a cesspool. What a monster. Boycott Viridian. How can someone do that to their parents? Sarah called me immediately. "Kathleen, this is bad. The optics are terrible. Billionaire evicts elderly parents" is a headline that kills stock prices. "We need to issue a statement." "No," I said. "We do not issue a statement. We issue the truth." "What do you mean?" "I have a folder," I said. "It is called The Receipts. It contains the police reports for Julian's fraud. It contains the bank statements showing the $450,000 I gave them. It contains the text messages where they called me a cash cow and wished I was dead. And it contains the foreclosure notice from the bank proving they lost the house gambling before I ever bought the debt." "Send it to me," Sarah said. Her voice changed from panic to predatory. "All of it." 2 hours later, Viridian Tech did not release a polite corporate apology. They released a nuclear warhead. They posted a press release titled, "Clarification regarding recent allegations against CFO Kathleen Ridgway." They didn't editorialize, they just posted the documents, the redacted bank logs showing the money transfers to my parents, the text message from my mother on graduation night, "Don't expect help, take the bus," the police report detailing Julian's theft of my identity, and finally, the audio recording from the bug Miller had planted, where my mother explicitly discussed getting a conservatorship to steal my money. The internet, a fickle beast, turned instantly. The comments on my parents' video shifted from sympathy to rage. "Wait, she gave you $500,000 and you stole her identity? You left her in the rain at graduation? These people are narcissists. Run, Kathleen, run." My parents deleted the video within an hour. But it was too late. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and it was a life sentence of shame. The final domino fell on Friday. I received a call from the private investigator. "Miller." He was parked down the street from the house. "You might want to know," Miller said. "Visitors have arrived." "The sheriff?" I asked. "It has not been 30 days. "No, not the sheriff. These guys are driving a black SUV with tinted windows. They do not look like law enforcement. They look like the kind of guys who break kneecaps for a living." My father's gambling debt. The $50,000 he had borrowed from the sharks when the bank cut him off. He had thought I would pay for it. He had probably told them I would pay for it. "What are they doing?" I asked. "They are removing collateral," Miller said. "They are taking the television, the stereo. They just loaded Julian's DJ equipment into the trunk. Your father is on the porch, crying. Your mother is screaming at the neighbors to stop looking." I closed my eyes. I could see the scene perfectly. The suburban lawn, the overgrown grass, the neighbors peeking through their blinds as the facade of the Ridgway family was dismantled piece by piece. "Do you want me to intervene?" Miller asked. "I can call the cops." "No," I said. "If I call the cops, the sharks will just come back later, and they will be angrier. Let them take the TV. It is just things. Dad needs to learn that actions have consequences. He gambled with money he didn't have." "Roger that," Miller said. "Oh, and Kathleen? They are taking the lobster paintings." I actually laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Let them have the art. It matches their souls." They were being stripped, not by me, but by the life they had built on a foundation of lies. I was not the cleaner anymore. I was not the janitor following behind them with a mop and a checkbook. I was just a spectator. The climax of their desperation came the following Monday. I was in my office on the 40th floor of the Viridian Tower. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, a city that finally felt like it belonged to me. I was reviewing the quarterly projections when my assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, buzzed in. "Ms. Ridgway?" Chloe's voice was hesitant. "There is a woman in the lobby. She claims to be your mother. She is making a scene." I sighed. I looked at the security feed on my second monitor. There she was, my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing her best coat, but it looked shabby against the sleek, minimalist design of the tech lobby. She was arguing with the large man at the security desk. I could see her gesturing wildly, pointing at the elevators. I pressed the intercom button. "What is she saying, Chloe?" "She is demanding to see you. She says she has a right to enter. She says you are sick and she needs to save you. She is yelling at the receptionist that they are kidnapping her daughter." I zoomed in on the camera. I saw the desperation in her eyes. It wasn't love. It was the panic of an addict cut off from their supply. She needed the fix. She needed the money, the control, the feeling of superiority she got from putting me down. "Ms. Ridgway, should I send security to escort her out?" I watched the screen for a long moment. I could go down there. I could face her. I could scream at her one last time. But that would give her what she wanted. It would give her an audience. It would give her a reaction. "No," I said. "Is her name on the guest list?" "No, ma'am. You specifically blacklisted all Ridgways." "Then treat her like any other unauthorized intruder," I said. "Do not engage. Just enforce the policy." I watched as the head of security stepped forward. He was polite but firm. He blocked her path to the turnstiles. I saw my mother try to push past him. He didn't budge. He simply pointed to the door. She screamed something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the tendons in her neck strain. She looked up at the ceiling, as if she knew I was watching from the sky. She shouted my name. Then, 2 more guards approached. They didn't touch her roughly, but they formed a wall. They guided her backward. She resisted for a moment. Then she crumbled. Her shoulders slumped. The fight went out of her. She turned around and walked toward the revolving doors. She looked old. She looked defeated. She walked out into the gray Seattle afternoon. Alone. I turned off the monitor. I looked at the paperwork on my desk. It was the acquisition deal for a new software startup. It was worth $40 million. I had built this. I had earned this. I picked up my pen. My hand was steady. The collapse was complete. The rubble had settled. And for the first time, the dust wasn't choking me. I went back to work. The 30th day was looming on the calendar like a cliff edge. I had spent the last 4 weeks in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the inevitable explosion. I had my lawyers ready. I had the sheriff on speed dial. I had Davis, my head of security, patrolling the perimeter of the Meridian Tower as if we were expecting a siege. But the call, when it came, did not come from a lawyer. It did not come from the sheriff. And it did not come from the blocked numbers of my family. It came at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, piercing the quiet hum of my office. The caller ID read, Swedish Medical Center. My hand hovered over the phone. For a second, just a split second, I was 6 years old again, waiting for my mother to pick me up from school, terrified that she had forgotten me. That instinct, that primal cord connecting a child to a parent, does not sever easily. You can hack at it with lawsuits and eviction notices, but the nerves remain raw. I picked up the phone. "This is Kathleen Ridgway," I said. "Ms. Ridgway, this is Dr. Patel from the emergency department. We have your father, Robert Ridgway, here. He has been admitted with a myocardial infarction, a heart attack." The air in my office seemed to thin. A heart attack. "Is he?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "He is stable, Doctor," Patel said. "But it was a significant event. He is in the cardiac care unit. He has listed you as his primary contact. We tried to run his insurance, but it appears the policy has lapsed due to non-payment. We need to discuss the billing and the next steps for surgery." Of course, they had stopped paying their health insurance premiums. They had likely used that money to pay for the deposit on the private dining room at Le Jardin, or to buy Julian a new mixer for his DJ set. "I see," I said. My voice was calm, but my pulse was hammering a frantic rhythm against my throat. Ms. Ridgway? Are you coming down? This was it. This was the test. The universe was calling my bluff. It was easy to be ruthless when they were healthy and manipulative. It was easy to evict them when they were villains. But could I evict a man lying in a hospital bed with a tube in his chest? Could I be the monster they claimed I was? I looked out the window at the gray skyline. I closed my eyes and saw the spreadsheet. I saw the text message. Don't expect help. I will be there in 20 minutes, I said. But I did not go alone. I called Beatrice. She met me in the lobby, carrying her briefcase like a shield. Do not go in there without armor, she warned me as we got into the car. Illness is the ultimate weapon of the narcissist. They will weaponize his heartbeat if they have to. I know, I said. I also called Dr. Eris Thorne, a private concierge doctor who consulted for Viridian's executive team. I paid him a retainer of $5,000 a month for exactly this kind of situation. I needed a witness. I needed someone to look at the monitors and tell me the truth. So my mother couldn't tell me he was dying if he was just suffering from indigestion. We arrived at the hospital like a phalanx. Me in the center, Beatrice on my left, Dr. Thorne on my right. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, the scent of waiting and worrying. We bypassed the reception desk and went straight to the cardiac care unit. I saw them before they saw me. My father was lying in a bed surrounded by beeping machinery. He looked small. That was the first thing that struck me. He had always been a looming figure in my life, a source of loud demands and heavy footsteps. Now, stripped of his bravado and his tuxedo, he was just a gray and deflated man in a gown that didn't fit. My mother was sitting in a plastic chair next to the bed. She was holding his hand. Her head was bowed. For a moment, she looked like a grieving wife. Then she looked up and saw me. The transformation was instantaneous. The grief evaporated, replaced by a sharp, calculating glint in her eyes. She sat up straighter. She squeezed my father's hand, waking him up. Look, Robert, she whispered loud enough for me to hear. She came. I told you she would come. She is a good girl deep down. I walked into the room. I stopped at the foot of the bed. I did not rush to his side. I did not weep. Hello, Dad, I said. Kathleen, he rasped. His voice was weak, reedy. You came. I brought Dr. Thorne, I said, gesturing to the man beside me. He is going to review your charts to make sure you are getting the best care. We don't need a doctor, my mother said quickly, her eyes darting to Beatrice. We need family. We need support. Dr. Thorne, I said, ignoring her. Please check the file. Doctor. Thorne stepped forward, picking up the digital chart from the foot of the bed. He scanned it professionally, ignoring my mother's glare. Severe blockage in the left anterior descending artery. Doctor, Thorne summarized after a moment. They placed a stent an hour ago. Vital signs are stabilizing. Prognosis is good, provided he reduces stress and changes his diet. He almost died, my mother wailed, throwing herself across my father's chest. The stress, Kathleen, the stress of the eviction, the stress of your cruelty. You did this to him. You broke his heart, literally. Beatrice stepped forward. Mrs. Ridgway, I would advise you not to make accusations of medical causation without evidence. Your husband has a 40-year history of smoking and a sedentary lifestyle. Who is she? My father wheezed. Get the lawyer out of here. She stays, I said. A hospital administrator, a nervous woman with a clipboard, hovered in the doorway. She looked at my suit, then at my mother's disheveled appearance. Ms. Ridgway? She asked. We need to resolve the payment issue. The procedure cost $22,000, and without insurance. My mother looked at me. It was a look of pure entitlement. She didn't even ask. She expected me to pull out the black card, pay the bill, upgrade him to a private suite, and then apologize for the inconvenience of his heart attack. I took the clipboard from the administrator. I looked at the total. $22,000. It was the price of a mid-range car. It was less than I made interested in a week. I pulled a checkbook from my bag. "I will pay for it," I said. My mother let out a breath. A sound of triumph. She looked at my father and nodded. "See? We got her. She is back on the hook." "Oh, thank God," my mother gushed. "Thank you, Kathleen. I knew you wouldn't let your father suffer. This is the first step, right? We can put all that ugliness behind us. We can be a family again." I handed the check to the administrator. "This covers the stent and the current hospital stay up to discharge. Do not bill me for anything else." The administrator nodded and scurried away. I stood there, looking at them. I felt nothing. No warmth, no relief. Just the cold satisfaction of balancing a ledger. "I paid the bill," I said to them, "not because I am your daughter, and not because I forgive you." My mother stood up. She walked around the bed and came close to me. She invaded my personal space. She smelled of old perfume and desperation. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, thinking Beatrice couldn't hear. "I know you are angry, kitten," she said, using a nickname she hadn't used since I was 5. "But look at him. He is frail. We can't be on the street. Not like this. If you just buy the house back from your company, cancel the eviction, I will make it up to you." She leaned closer, her eyes wide and manic. "I will make Julian apologize," she whispered. "I will force him. I will make him get on his knees and beg for your forgiveness. I will make him say whatever you want to hear. Just give us the house." I stared at her. The world seemed to slow down. Here it was. The final offer. The grand bargain. She was selling out her golden child. She was offering up Julian's dignity, what little he had left, in exchange for real estate. She was willing to humiliate her favorite son if it meant she could keep her walk-in closet. It was so grotesque, so nakedly transactional, that it finally killed the last lingering cell of hope in my body. I had always thought she loved Julian more. I realize now that she didn't love Julian. She loved herself. Julian was just an extension of her ego, just as I was an extension of her wallet. We were not people to her. We were currency, and right now, the exchange rate on Julian had dropped, so she was trying to liquidate him to buy security. I felt a physical sensation in my chest, like a heavy chain snapping. The weight dropped away. I looked into her eyes. I saw the void there. "No," I said. My mother blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated. My voice was not a whisper. It was a gavel. "I do not want Julian's apology. It has no value. It is a counterfeit bill. Mom. Just like your love." But your father," she stammered, pointing to the bed. "I paid his medical bill because I am a decent human being," I said. "I would have done the same for a stranger on the street. I did it because I have $25 million and I can sleep at night knowing I didn't let a man die over a check. But that is where it ends." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I placed it on the bedside table next to the pitcher of water. "What is that?" my father asked weakly. "Is it the deed?" "No," I said. "It is a list." "A list?" "A list of state-funded assisted living facilities," I explained. "And a list of homeless shelters that accept elderly residents with medical conditions. I also included the contact information for the Social Security office. You can apply for emergency housing assistance." My mother looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb. "Shelters? You want us to go to a shelter?" "I want you to take responsibility for your lives," I said. "You have 30 days, well, 29 now. The clock did not stop because Dad's heart did." "You are evil," my mother hissed. The mask fell away completely. The kitten was gone. "You are a cold, heartless bitch. I hope you die alone in your penthouse." "I might," I said, and for the first time. The thought didn't scare me. "But I will die with my dignity, and I will die debt-free." I turned around. "Dr. Thorne, thank you. You can bill my office. Beatrice, let's go." "Kathleen," my father shouted, struggling to sit up, the monitors beeping frantically. "Don't you walk away. I command you. I am your father." I didn't pause. I walked out of the room, past the nurse's station, and down the long, sterile hallway. But I didn't make it to the exit without one last encounter. In the waiting room, sitting on a sticky vinyl chair, was Julian. He looked unrecognizable. The gel was gone from his hair, leaving it limp and greasy. He was wearing a tracksuit that looked like he had slept in it for 3 days. He had dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights in a holding cell and the terrifying reality of a pending felony charge. He stood up when he saw me. He didn't have the arrogance anymore. He didn't have the sneer. "Kathy," he said. His voice was cracked. I stopped. Beatrice signaled for Davis, who was waiting by the door, but I waved him off. I didn't need protection from Julian anymore. He was a toothless wolf. "Julian," I said. He shuffled his feet. "Is Dad okay?" "He will live," I said. "I paid the bill." Hope flared in Julian's eyes. "You paid for it? That is great. Thanks. Kathy, look, I know I messed up. I know I screwed up big time with the credit card. I was just desperate. You know how it is." "I do know how it is," I said. "I was desperate for 10 years while I paid for your mistakes." Right, he nodded quickly. "I get it. I learned my lesson. Seriously. But look with this record. I can't get a job, nobody will hire me, and if we lose the house—" He stepped closer, wringing his hands. "I was thinking," he said, trying to summon a ghost of his old charm. "Viridian, it is a huge company, right? You are the CFO. You could hire me. I don't need to be an executive. I could work in the mailroom. I could drive a truck. Hell, I could be security. I am tough. Just give me a job. Kathy, put me on the payroll so I can show the judge I'm employed. Please." I looked at him. My brother. The boy who used to break my toys and laugh. The man who had stolen my identity. He was asking to guard the very empire he had mocked. "Security?" I asked. "Yeah. I could protect the building. I could protect you." I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Julian," I said, looking him up and down, "you stole from your sister while she was in a coma. You forged a signature for $5,000. You sold your grandmother's ring for drinking money." I leaned in close. "You are not qualified to guard a sandwich," I said, "let alone a billion-dollar company." "But I am family," he cried, tears welling up in his eyes. "Doesn't that count for anything?" "It counts against you," I said, "because you should have known better." I walked past him. He tried to grab my arm, but Davis stepped in. A silent wall of muscle. Julian shrank back, defeated. 30 days. Julian, I called back over my shoulder. Start packing." I walked out through the automatic doors into the cool air. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. "Are you all right?" Beatrice asked as we reached the car. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the air that didn't smell of sickness or obligation. "Yes," I said. "I think I finally am." I had faced the final temptation. I had looked into the eyes of the guilt that had controlled me for decades, and I had not blinked. I had paid the ransom for my soul. And now, finally, I was free to walk away. The closing of the sale on my parents' house took exactly 45 minutes. It happened in a sterile conference room at the bank. A room that smelled of stale coffee and crushed dreams. I sat on one side of the mahogany table, flanked by Beatrice and my real estate agent. My parents sat on the other side. They looked shrunken. My father's suit was wrinkled, and my mother's hands were empty of rings. When the escrow officer slid the final settlement statement across the table, my father reached for it with a trembling hand. He was expecting a check. In his delusional mathematics, he still believed that after 30 years of home ownership, there must be some equity left. He thought that even after the first mortgage, the second mortgage, the gambling debts, and the foreclosure fees, there would be a golden parachute. He looked at the bottom line. "Zero?" he whispered. His voice was a dry rattle. "This says zero." "Actually," the escrow officer corrected gently, "it is negative $400. But Ms. Ridgway has graciously agreed to cover the closing costs to ensure the title transfers cleanly. My mother grabbed the paper. That is impossible. We put a down payment on this house in 1995. It is worth a fortune. It was worth a fortune, I said, speaking for the first time. Until you leveraged it to death. You treated your home like an ATM, and now the machine is empty. They signed the papers in silence. There was no screaming this time. The fight had gone out of them. They were not raging against the dying of the light anymore. They were just tired. I watched them leave the bank. They walked to the bus stop. Their car had been repossessed the week before. They were moving into a 400-square-foot studio apartment in a subsidized senior living complex on the outskirts of the city. It was clean, safe, and warm, which was more than they deserved. But it was small. There would be no room for parties, no room for lobster dinners, and certainly no room for Julian. Julian had found his own accommodation. A week later, I decided to get a coffee before work. I didn't go to my usual high-end cafe. I drove to a diner on the edge of the downtown district, a place where the pancakes were greasy and the coffee was cheap. I parked my Aston Martin around the corner so it wouldn't draw attention. I walked in and sat in a booth near the back. "Server," a man at the next table shouted. "My toast is cold." "I am coming, sir, I am coming," a harried voice replied. I looked up. It was Julian. He was wearing an apron that was stained with ketchup. His hair was messy, and he looked exhausted. He was carrying a pot of coffee in one hand and a stack of plates in the other. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. He rushed over to the angry customer, apologizing profusely, his head bowed in a posture of servitude I had never seen on him before. "I will get you fresh toast right away," Julian stammered. "And refill my coffee," the man grunted. "Yes, sir." Julian turned and saw me. He froze. The coffee pot shook in his hand, splashing hot liquid onto his wrist. He winced. But he didn't drop it. He couldn't afford to drop it. If he got fired, he violated the terms of his probation. Beatrice had negotiated a plea deal. No jail time. But 5 years of probation, mandatory restitution payments, and a requirement to maintain full-time employment for the first time in his life. Julian Ridgway had to work. He looked at me with a mixture of shame and longing. I think he wanted me to save him. I think he wanted me to pull out a checkbook and buy the diner and fire the rude customer. I just looked at him. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just nodded. Once, acknowledgement. Then I stood up and walked out. I didn't order anything. I had seen enough. He was finally learning the lesson I had learned at 16. Money is exchanged for labor, not for existing. I drove home. Home was no longer a concept fraught with anxiety. Home was the 45th floor of the Meridian Tower. I unlocked the door and stepped onto the white oak floors. The silence was not empty. It was peaceful. I walked across the living room, past the grand piano I had bought and was learning to play, and stepped out onto the balcony. The city of Seattle lay spread out below me like a carpet of jewels. The Space Needle pierced the clouds, glowing gold in the twilight. It was raining. The familiar gray drizzle that used to soak into my bones and make me feel small. But up here, under the heated overhang of my terrace, the rain was just scenery. It was beautiful. I felt a wet nose nudge my hand. I looked down. Barnaby, a golden retriever mix I had adopted from the shelter 3 weeks ago, was looking up at me with adoring eyes. He didn't care about my stock options. He didn't care about my job title. He cared that I had saved him from a cage, and in return, he gave me the only thing I had ever really wanted: unconditional love. My mother had never let me have a dog. They smell. She used to say, they cost money. They are a burden. I crouched down and buried my face in Barnaby's fur. He smelled like expensive dog shampoo and warmth. "Who is a good boy?" I whispered. Barnaby wagged his tail, his whole body shaking with joy. I stood up and took a deep breath of the cool air. I was 32 years old, and my life was just beginning. The following month, Viridian Tech held its annual gala. It was a black tie event, the kind of night where the city's elite gathered to pat themselves on the back. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, I was the keynote speaker. I stood backstage, smoothing the silk of my emerald green gown. My heart was beating steady and strong. "You look fierce," a voice said behind me. I turned to see Beatrice. She was wearing a tuxedo, looking every inch the legal titan she was. "I feel fierce," I said. "Thank you, Beatrice, for everything." "I just filed the paperwork," she shrugged, adjusting her cufflinks. "You did the heavy lifting. You walked away." "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, "please welcome the Chief Financial Officer of Viridian Tech and this year's recipient of the Innovator of the Year Award, Kathleen Ridgway." The applause was thunderous. I walked out onto the stage. The lights were blinding, but I didn't squint. I looked out into the sea of faces. Usually, at these events, the honoree's family occupies the front row. There is a tearful mother, a proud father, a cheering sibling. I looked at the front table. My parents were not there. Julian was not there, but the table was full. There was Beatrice, raising a glass of champagne. There was Marcus, my CFO and friend, grinning like a maniac. There was Aunt Laura, wearing a dress I had bought for her, looking shy but proud. There was Dr. Thorne, and there was Davis, my security head, standing guard but smiling. These were the people who had protected me. These were the people who had told me the truth. I walked to the podium. I didn't give the speech I had written about market caps and quarterly earnings. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "They say that success is lonely at the top, but I have found that the view is much better when you are not carrying the weight of people who do not want you to climb." The applause that followed was real. It wasn't polite. It was a recognition of survival. Later that night, as I was being driven home in the back of the limousine, my phone buzzed. It was a notification. An email. Sender: Martha Ridgway. Subject: Happy birthday. I stared at the screen. It was my birthday, in the chaos of the gala. I had almost forgotten. My mother had remembered, or more likely, she had a calendar alert set on her phone, a remnant of the days when she used my birthday as an excuse to ask for a celebratory loan. I opened the email preview. "Happy birthday. Kathleen, I hope you are happy. We are eating soup tonight. It is cold here. Dad misses you. Just thought you should know." It was a masterpiece of passive aggression, a guilt trip wrapped in a greeting card. She was trying to plant a hook, a tiny barb of pity that she hoped would fester. I looked at the words, "We are eating soup," a year ago. That sentence would have ruined my night. I would have sent money. I would have called. I would have felt like a monster for eating cake while they suffered. Now, I felt nothing. It was like reading an email from a Nigerian prince asking for my bank details. It was spam. It was noise. I didn't reply. I didn't type out a furious response detailing how much lobster they had eaten on my dime. I didn't block her, either. Blocking her would imply that she still had the power to upset me. I simply pressed move to spam. The email vanished from my inbox. It was gone, filed away with the advertisements for hair loss pills and discount vacations. I put the phone down and looked out the window. "Davis," I said to the driver, "can we make a detour?" "Wherever you want to go, Ms. Ridgway. Take me to the University District, the bus stop on 4th and Pine." Davis didn't ask questions. He turned the car around. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to the curb. It was raining again, just like that night. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement in long, distorted streaks of neon. I rolled down the window. I looked at the metal bench. It was rusted in places. I remembered sitting there. I remembered the cold water soaking through my gown. I remembered the text message that had felt like a bullet to the chest. "Don't expect help." I remembered the girl who had sat there. She had been scared. She had been lonely. She had felt worthless because the people who were supposed to love her had thrown her away. I wanted to reach back through time and hug her. I wanted to tell her that she was not a black sheep. She was a lioness in waiting. "We are announcing the scholarship tomorrow, right?" I asked Beatrice, who was sitting beside me. Yes, Beatrice said. The Margaret Ridgway Memorial Grant. Full tuition and housing for students who have been estranged from their families or are survivors of financial abuse. Good, I said. I want to make sure no one else has to sit on a bench like this and feel like they have no options. I looked at the bus stop one last time. A bus pulled up. A young girl got off. She looked tired. She was carrying a heavy backpack. She didn't have an umbrella. I watched her hunch her shoulders against the rain. I opened the door. Davis, I said. Give her the umbrella. Davis grabbed the large black golf umbrella from the holder in the door. He jumped out and ran over to the girl. I watched him hand it to her. She looked confused, then shocked. Then she smiled. I closed the window. Let's go home, I said. The car pulled away, merging into the traffic. I leaned back in the soft leather seat. Barnaby was asleep at my feet. Beatrice was humming a tune. I smiled. It wasn't the manic smile of the day I got rich. It wasn't the vindictive smile of the day I evicted them. It was a quiet smile. A smile that reached my eyes. I had lost a family. Yes, but I had found myself. And looking at the bank balance of my soul, I realized I had come out infinitely ahead. I used to think family was blood. I used to think it was the DNA that knitted our bones together. But now I knew the truth. Family is not the people who share your last name. Family are the people who hold the umbrella for you when the storm breaks. They are the ones who answer the phone when you have nothing to give. They are the ones who cheer for you when you win. Not because they want a cut of the prize, but because they are happy you are standing, and the people who tell you to walk home in the rain, they are just strangers passing in the night. And I had finally, successfully, driven past them. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and ultimate freedom. If you enjoyed Kathleen's journey from the rainy bus stop to the penthouse, please let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from today? Are you in a rainy city like Seattle, or somewhere sunny? We would love to hear your thoughts on Kathleen's decision. Did she go too far, or was it exactly what they deserved? Don't forget to subscribe to Sunday Drama Stories for more emotional roller coasters. Hit that like button if you cheered for Kathleen, and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. See you in the next video.